I've always had the win or learn mentality. I've always been okay with mistakes, but I'm not okay with the same mistake multiple times, right? So that's when it's like, okay, we've got to address this.
You ready to have a hard conversation?
Always tough. That's why they call them hard.
I'm just kidding. This won't be one, but it's top of both of our minds. And where we came up with this topic is a number of hard conversations that are happening all the time. And it feels like getting to them seems to be half the work to get to a transparent conversation, to get belly to belly or even through a Zoom call, making sure that we're getting to the point and actually communicating effectively without kind of back to taking our masks off and getting to what's important, as opposed to communicating through multiple channels, especially in a group setting, to have hard conversations and be transparent in what's becoming a digital and somewhat artificial world. What do you think about it?
Yeah, good topic. These are always communication's key with everything, man. Like, it's so key in your relationships, it's key in your business, it's key with yourself, right? And how you communicate with, internally. But yeah, these radical kind of conversations are they are hard, but they're needed. And the moment you shy away from them is the moment that you kind of just thrown it under a rug, or trying to compartmentalize it and move on, but nothing ever really gets resolved, and you just have this weight carrying on you, whether you know it or not. It eventually builds up, and it you're wondering 6 months down the road, a year down the road, you didn't close the loop with that person, and you're like, man, like, there's just something weighing on me, like, what's going on? And then you realize, like, we're just not on good terms, or I need to figure out how to resolve this situation. And all it would have taken would have been a 2-minute conversation, if that, a 30-second conversation of just being open, honest, and transparent, and not worrying about how each other feels, and just sharing expectations, or what is needed.
It's a great point, and you bring up something that we weren't going to get to later, but those are the things that we tend to avoid. Like,
Yeah.
and we know, and even when we do address them, that's when we talk about using flowery language, or even placing blame outside of the people that are in the conversation. Those are the things that can get in the way. And this is, again, simple, not easy, but it's been top of mind because something we put a lot of effort into in my day job as a cultural organization. And I think that culture piece is sometimes what gets in the way. You want to have a good culture. You want to have a good environment and a collaborative environment, right? Hard conversations are a part of that, but oftentimes we think of culture as just the good feelings, high emotions when things are going well, to keep people in a great mental state to be effective and do big things.
Yeah.
But we all know no big things happen without some really hard conversations and direct conversations.
Well, and I was just, as you were talking, I was just thinking about, like, the relationship you have with clients, and how sometimes, when you're in the service industry like we are, sometimes you kind of feel like, the client is always right is a tough spot to be in, because yeah, you want to serve them at a high level, but if you've got an abusive client, like, I've had to make calls over the years, not a lot, but every once in a while I'll have to make a call to a client because they're just being jerks to the team for no reason, right? There's something else going on in their world. So you have to have this direct conversation, because what that can do, if the client continues to do that, it just drags down the team member. And then eventually to the point where the team member's like, I don't want to work here anymore. And
Not to
so,
mention the time, capital, and resources that are going into that client that could be placed into, even if they're your number 1, 2, 3 client,
right.
that can be put to bringing in 5 others.
And it's just as easy as, like, if I were to just let this go because I want to avoid conflict and I don't want to lose the client or whatever, like, well, I could eventually lose the culture of my team, because this client is just causing so many internal issues of people, going back and forth and whatever. So I've had to make those calls, like, hey, look, you can't do that. Like, if there's an issue, you can always call me and we'll figure it out, but we're working on it. Like, we're resolving this, or whatever it is. Or if a mistake was happened, it's just reminding them, like, we're human too. Like, we're going to get this figured out for you and we're going to make it right. But sometimes it's not even a mistake. It's just little things. And so it's just like, or it's a training issue, right? And you didn't have proper communication up front, or we didn't do our job well enough up front to train the client on what they can and can't do, or whatever, right? And so you have these tough conversations. But if I was the type of leader that was like, oh, well, I'll just, what, time will heal all, or we'll just let that be. I want to avoid conflict. I don't want them, what if the client leaves or whatever? Like, you have to be okay with them leaving. Like, you got to look at the bigger picture. You can always add 2 clients of the same size down the road to make up for that, and you'll grow and have 2 more fun, positive clients to work with. But yeah, those types of conversations in the service industry can be tough, but you have to be okay losing a client if they're causing issues internally, because that's more important is your people.
Yeah, and as we were jumping on, we kind of talked through a couple examples that we're going through now, and kind of kicking us off as we were ruminating about this episode. I wanted to go, oddly enough, going back to a book, and we worked this
Wait,
into as
you reading, referencing a book?
and this was assigned reading, kind of.
Yeah.
We worked this into a theme for kicking off the year a couple years back, and the author of the book is Kim Scott, and she actually spoke at the conference, and she wrote the book, a bestseller, went crazy across the business world, but again, it applies across, called Radical Candor. And the beauty of it is she talks about like caring personally, but challenging directly. And again, it's paradoxical. This is not obnoxious aggression, which is, I don't know, we think old school, boiler room, old school sales teams, old school leaders that are get it done at all costs, crack the whip, more stick than carrot, et cetera. And being manipulative, being insincere, just using incentives to drive performance, positive and negative. And then on the other side of that, you have like what could be ruinous empathy. When I talk about that culture, just being, we are all a family as a company, which we all know doesn't exist. That one's getting a lot of play lately. If you don't have bumpers or guidelines of where you're directing the teams and the organization, that empathy, you're just gonna you're gonna spin in place.
Yeah.
And so the idea is finding that balance there for growth. And it's like when people think they're actually being kind leaders, they can be operating in ruinous empathy. But the goal is to tell someone what they need to hear and act as you care, not being cruel. And so this book hit. It had to change kind of structure of conversations. I thought we were doing a good job about it, but when you start breaking down your conversations, you can also shorten meetings. You can really get to the point as long as you're showing up with that mindset of empathy, which some people have naturally. Others, that's hard. You're kind of on that scale one way or the other. So radical candor as a topic to kick us off. And I know that I think you do a pretty darn good job of this with the business that you run.
I got to pick that book up. I'm really interested in that. I think it can come natural to some people and others, probably majority not natural. I think majority of people are either super empathetic, like you alluded to, or they're super direct and there's no like, challenging with empathy or being dismissive with empathy. I think that's tough, right? I think that there's also situations like you mentioned it, that like it cuts meetings short. We'll have meetings and like I love the banter and all this stuff, and like, but at some point you got to just like, all right, let's just get down to business, right? And so there's times where that's happened, and the team just kind of laughs at me, like, all right, moving on, But I think you need that kind of like you make it fun or whatever. It's like, hey guys, all right, we're here to talk about X, Y, Z or whatever. I love that you're really interested in whatever it is you did on the weekend, but we don't need to spend 10 minutes on it,
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Like we're using some tracking software, and I'm not going to lie, the small talk on some of my calls that are recorded, I was kind of toward the top of the leadership. I'm like, oh, that made me.
Yeah. How much time?
We're building, but sometimes you build relationships, and it goes a long way. You actually are curious where you left off the last conversation. So, but that's more of an external thing, not internal.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress.
It can be hard sometimes when you're in the mode of just like work, or like it's all about business and you're growing and you're focused on metrics and you're just, I know I get into these modes, but you have entrepreneurs and others that are just like, it's all business. I think it is difficult to show that empathy, like just do your job type of thing. Like you run into these people that will just focus on like, just get the job done. Like what, I don't even want to have these conversations. I just want to work. Like you're just in that mode and it doesn't go over well. And you have to take the steps back. And I think that takes a lot of personal development and a lot of work on yourself too, to be able to take the steps back for yourself. Like if you're in this mode where you just work, and then you project that onto the team, like that's not how most people operate. And if you want to build a good team, you have to meet them where they are. and you have to understand what they're going through and the life that they're living in order to get the most out of them, and figure out how they like to be motivated, how they like to be incentivized. And you can't figure that out unless you're empathetic and truly care about that person. And so when you have these conversations, even if they're making a mistake, you've developed that relationship with them. You can have the strong conversation with them because they know that you love them. They know that you care for them, and they're not looking at it as a negative. But if you don't have that relationship because you're not empathetic or you're not focused on who they are, you're just focused on just the job and that they're just kind of a number. That's where I think you can lose and you can really struggle. And now you have a revolving door of people that you're training in and out of the organization.
Yeah, your boy Gary V, who has grown on me over the last 5 years ish.
He's changed like in a good way. Like you could see his like trajectory of how he speaks and his thoughts. Like I don't know if it's age, but yeah, like early on he was very vulgar and kind of like straight to the point. But he's totally moved to I feel like a people first type of leader.
I caught a conversation of him talking with Sam and Sean, some of the inspirations for the pod, and he was just super open about how bad of a firer he was. And he said the cliche of hire slow, fire fast was a learning curve for him, because he loved pouring into people, and then it would go multiple years of it not working. And then he'd see him on Friday and be like, have a good weekend. And then Monday it'd be like, come to your office, say this isn't working out, you're done. And it was like, what are you talking about? Like, you got no warning, etc. But he talked about working this concept in, but not as opposed to radical candor. He wanted it to be, implemented kind candor, which is exactly the same thing. It's the whole point of the book, is like, we're going to be open throughout this process, not performance improvement plans, but we're going to address things as they come up. So we have a track record and an ongoing conversation of progress. Are we spiraling up or spiraling down, which has been a theme that you've helped me come up with over the course of these conversations. And he implemented that. I think you're going to enjoy that conversation. We may link that in the show notes for the listeners, as it was a really good conversation.
Yeah, we can do that. I'm looking forward to checking that one out. I'm about few weeks behind on that My First Million podcast, so I'm looking forward to hearing Gary Vee. Yeah, he has changed a bit, which is good. I think he was kind of a wild guy, but he was one of the first entrepreneurs when I got dipped my toe into it 9 years ago and was starting 10 years ago thinking about launching the business. And it's like, who can I follow? And he was one of the first guys that popped up. Of course, right? He's all over social media. He's going to be found if you're looking. And so reading his books and going through his stuff, like it was all like, yeah, let's go. Like he was just getting you fired up and motivated and all this stuff. But now you can definitely see some of his things, and he's definitely more like, you have to do that. I've fallen victim to that too, where I can develop them, I can get them there, I can get them there, and then 2 years later you're like, dude, this just isn't working, and you can't get them. You can never get them to the next level if they don't want to get there themselves. And so you try your hardest as leader to get people to that level. But I will say, there's two sides of this too. Like you may have your ways and the way you want things done, but you've got to be open to the way other people would do things too. And you've got to ask yourself, like, if someone's doing something differently than you, is it causing an issue because they're not doing it the same way as you? Or is it causing an issue because it's literally causing an issue or something within the organization? Like, you've got to ask yourself what you're going to be okay with. Because if you're so wrapped up in like, oh, I need to be like on somebody, like micromanage, or like, that's not going to work either. So if there's mistakes or things that are happening, but there's things that have happened where it's like, we'll talk about it as leaders, and it's like, are we okay with this? Like, I think we can be okay with this. Like, it's different than what we would have done, but it's not causing harm or anything, right? So it's like, we'll just kind of let it be. And so you have to kind of play that game a little bit too, of like, when do I address this, and do I need to address this, or can I be okay with this situation? And so that's a part of the radical candor, I would say, that you brought up, that you have with yourself. Like, you have to be direct with yourself. Like, do I to really question that and sit back and not just fire immediately based on impulse?
You're right. There's an introspection piece to it that you have to have before the communication. And that kind of leads to, it's a similar concept, but I want to frame it up to something recently that we've done over the past few years, but like transparency and this concept of a war room, which I know can be, given our modern times, it might seem a little extreme. I always find it funny when you look at corporations, they're actually built off of the military structure. It's just the evolution of the United States. And you start throwing military boots on ground and all this lingo. But I love the concept of a war room because, first of all, people kind of understand that there's going to be a hard conversation to be held there with a group of people. Not this isn't a one-on-one, but they're typically high stakes environments, or at least an environment where everyone really cares about the outcome for whatever organization or group it is. And so you think of like trading floors, large organizations, people trying to build something, and they require the type of clarity that common politeness is just not going to get it done. And so Ray Dalio introduced this into his book Principles. He said he had to have them at his firm Bridgewater Capital all the time, and his logic was that when you get people in a group and there's radical transparency across the entire organization, as much as you can legally, when people can see reality clearly and speak to it directly, better decisions come out of it. And the discomfort is the mechanism. So the formula was pain plus reflection equals progress. And I love that.
That's good.
It's like these conversations are painful, but if we're being introspective, as you just mentioned, while the pain is pressing on us, that's how diamonds emerge, right? That pressure compounding. And I just think we avoid it all the time.
We
I know I
100% avoid it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, no one likes conflict. But if
Yeah.
you look at it as,
sometimes,
I mean, it's not enjoyable. At the end of the day, it's like, it is what it is. And so it's just factual stuff. And it's going to be a blip on the radar, you know? And so, yeah, those challenging conversations people don't like to have, but it'll be over in 60 seconds. And the war room style meetings that you're talking about, like, hey, let's get everyone in a room and let's hash this out, because we're all going to be better once we leave this room, as opposed to just continuing to let it slide or just operating, you know, at too high of a level. You're not getting into the weeds.
And that letting slide is Dalio referred to it as hedging.
Yeah.
Which I have definitely been known to do. You can take a conversation a certain way. It's like, oh, you kind of have an out. We've got multiple options to do here. Kind of fence right it, which sometimes you do need to fence right it to see both times. But we were talking about beating around the bush is like the old school cliche that's thrown around. And it's just done so often because that is the comfortable thing, to hedge and beat around the bush.
I do that all the time too. I agree. It's almost like, but it goes back to like, does it matter? Like, is it affecting you? I think you have to have the conversation if it's affecting your livelihood and affecting you negatively. You can't let it slide if you're personally being impacted by this. But if you're not being impacted and it's not harmful to anyone else, I let shit slide all the time. Like, it doesn't bother me. I don't know.
And the other people know that you're letting it slide. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, from a vibrational level, most people that are any type of in tune know when the conversation's softening and we're hedging.
Yeah.
And it'll take one person to be like, well, wait a second, what are we trying to do here? And we've seen that happen a lot in Junta, which is refreshing. And then you get to other areas where everybody's being transparent, and it can get just rapid fire in these rooms.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know.
It's good.
Again,
it's
like polar opposite. It's really good. Yeah.
But it's also like, is it negatively impacting me is one thing, but you've also got to think about, is it negatively impacting others that are close to you? Like, it can't just be personal. So like, if something is happening and it's not personally affecting you, but it's affecting someone else and how their livelihood is, and they're close to you, but it's your job, you're the leader, you're the one that needs to make the hard conversation to correct that action, even though it has nothing to do with you, it's between two other people. That's almost even harder, because now you're playing a little middleman, but you have to make this war room style meeting. I've gotten in trouble where I've had one-on-one conversations with one person, and then I have another one-on-one conversation with the other person to correct the issues that person's having with that person. But I didn't have a 3-person meeting, me and the 2 people at the same time. And then you just get a lot of pushback and, well, he said, she said type of stuff. And I'm like, oh man, I messed this up. Like, why didn't I just get us 3 in a room and just kind of be the mediator for them to hash it out, as opposed to me trying to stick myself in the middle when I didn't need to be? That was one of the biggest. It took me a long time to learn it, because I got caught so many times, and it didn't work out well in my favor. And so I learned, okay, I can't insert myself when someone else has an issue over here with this person over here, and then I make schedule a meeting or a conversation with this person, and then they feel 100% different than what I was told over here. And now I'm like, oh, well, now I get your point. Now I get your point. I need to get people in the room. Like I can't, or it's if this person's saying something about an issue with another person, the communication, it's, hey, you know what? I hear you. I know exactly, I understand you're going through these issues. Encouraging them to have the radical candor with that person directly without me involved.
One on
Right.
one.
Right. There's a miscommunication is more often the reason why there's struggle.
Yeah.
It's because people are assuming or are not on the same page. And so encouraging radical candor for others, if they're giving you information about someone else that they have an issue with, encouraging that to say, hey, try this. Like, I understand what you're going through, but try this. Have that, schedule that call, sit down with each other. Don't do it over Teams or text or whatever. Like, do it in person and figure out what's going on. And if you can't fix it, I'll jump in and we'll all three get together.
Absolutely. Dude.
It took a long time to learn that, dude. That's so hard.
I didn't think I was going to be talking about this, but the conversation took me there per usual. How about, so I've told you a little bit about how I was trying to move my entire coaching operating system that's worked for me, combining all the things from the Flow Research Collective, Dom's process of hypnosis, and combining it all into my operating system and using artificial intelligence to build it out. And as I was building it out and using it weekly, I got so mad. Like, I am embarrassed about how mad I got at my computer, like wanting to break the screen at some point, because it would not, the AI would not be radically transparent. It would not have a hard conversation. I'm like,
you're like, are you yelling at it?
I am punching the
tell
keyboard.
Me the truth.
Oh, great job, Phil. You failed again. No, not great job. Like, change your, and it took for, honestly, it was so, because it worked against me because I was mad because I knew I wasn't being held accountable by this.
That's so funny.
Repetitive. Anyway, that was a while back. We've made progress. I think it's important, and I do think that it could go there. I'm not an expert, but like this concept of, can AI have this productive, polite mode to guide us, but also be radically transparent? Or is it just going to, it can obviously switch based on the language model going in and what it's prompted and has learned to do. Opens up a whole different kind of can of worms, but just made me think about it here. Like, it's consciousness. It's like,
it is.
AI going to get there?
And speaking of AI, if you're trying to have this radical candor with somebody, the last thing you want to do is just pump out some AI general response, right? Like, because people read through that. So like, dude, that's not you. Like, you talk about authenticity. Like, you've got to take that information. Like, yeah, you can use AI to summarize data, but don't copy and paste it and send it to somebody, because it doesn't sound like you. Then it even makes it worse, because you're not even putting
use it to draw your thoughts out of you.
Correct. But we actually had so we had our virtual conference this week, Journeys conference, and we had a big conversation on AI, and this video was being played. Jeff Bezos, maybe you've seen it, and he talks about, and the conversation was like AI taking over jobs and all this stuff, and like how that's not going to happen in our business. Like, we're focused on educating people to use AI as a tool to make themselves better and be more efficient and authentic. Like, using it as like, I save a few minutes on an email because I got a suggested response. Now I can put together and craft an email that make, for the client or whatever. Right. So things like that internally. But the Bezos video, he gives this analogy of the AI. If you were to go take down a house, like you need to knock down a house or whatever to rebuild, for the businesses that aren't implementing AI, you're showing up with a shovel. And the businesses that are implementing AI are showing up with a bulldozer. Both of them will eventually get the job done, but the guy with the shovel is eventually going to be non-existent if you're not implementing the new big tools that can do things faster. However, you have to be the business that is not reckless with the bulldozer. Yes, you have the tool, but if you're reckless with it, you're going to take down the whole neighborhood when you can only take down the house. So yes, you have this tool that can do all of these amazing things, but you have to be the one to drive the bulldozer in the right direction and use it properly. So it's not being absent from it and being afraid of it. It's going all in on it, but it's also not being reckless with it. So not just taking the information and blasting it out there to try and solve your problem. It's not going to work that way. You need both. You need the AI, you need the human. And that's where I think people need to look at it.
Well, Stephen, to be transparent, I need to get the heck off this podcast, even though I don't want to stop.
I know you're golfing. Who are you golfing with?
Some colleagues. Got a day off. And yeah.
Where are you playing?
I will not mention that on this podcast.
You're not
I
gonna
don't want
mention
all of
where
our
you're playing?
I don't want all our fans showing up for autographs.
Dude, you're gonna have to sign autographs, and it doesn't
Please
matter.
cut this.
This is not. It's not live. All right, for everyone that knows Phil, he's available. Find him in the golf course. He's willing to sign autographs. But all right, well, brother, have a good round and hit him long, hit him straight, and enjoy the pod.